Hi, my name's Kevin Gardere, and as Deacon Louis said, I'm the CEO at Bridge House Grace House. And I had to meet with a major donor today because, like, cash donations makes up about 25% of our budget. We also have thrift stores that bring in a lot of money, and also I'll talk about later provide a place for the residents while they're in treatment to work. Vocational rehabilitation is a huge part of our program and really kind of separates us from everybody else. And the fact that we are long term. When I say long term, we ask the men and women that come to us. Bridge House is our men's facility, Grace House is our women's facility. We ask them to make a commitment to stay with us for 4 to 7 months. Most of the people that are completing is right below 6 months, but it's a huge commitment. And I was talking to Christina. I tell people it's easy to get into, but it's difficult to stay. And if you're able to come through our program and complete it, you have every tool that is necessary to stay sober the rest of your life, one day at a time. But when meeting with the donor, I told him, I'm here. He's in Covington. I said, I'm going to go eat dinner with my sister, and then I'm going to this SAM meeting. And I just started talking about Louis, Deacon Louis, because at one of the big forums he held, he talked about meeting me, and then he talked about walking through like the front doors of 1160 Camp Street, thinking it was prison, thinking people were going to be shooting up, smoking crack in a corner. All of those thoughts were going through his head. And the first guy he saw that was a current resident was the most intimidating looking man I've ever known. And I got to know him quite well because he came through Bridge House about 15 times. And he's been sober for over 5 years now. But while we're at this gathering at St. Angela Merisi, the Archbishop there, Deacon Louis there, Ken Roy, who started River Oaks Hospital, and then RNO was there, and me, and Louis is telling the crowd, and it was hundreds of people there, and he's telling the crowd about Howard, and Howard called my phone. He was living in Florida at the time, and he would call me, and sometimes he'd be drunk, sometimes he'd be loaded, but I would hear him out, and then I was like, you know what you have to do, you need to come back. But as soon as Deacon Louis finished talking about him, I'm sitting there, I'm nervous because I have to share some of my story with all these people, and my phone rings and it's Howard H. And I'm like, I still get goosebumps thinking about that moment. But he came back and he did well. So I did not grow up wanting to become the CEO of Bridge House Grace House. I entered, the hard way, and I came into Bridge House, which is a long-term residential substance use disorder treatment facility for the homeless, indigent, uninsured, and or unemployed. And that's what I was in 2001. And as Louis talked about being scared, like going to a prison, I remember telling my mom after week 2, this is like a prison. And I had never been to prison before. I don't know how I never got arrested, but I didn't. But scared to death, thinking like, here I am, all these people, all these crackheads, bums, and it's gonna be big. But, I grew up in a great family. I was the youngest of 5, and there's a lot of age difference between me and my top 3 siblings, and then me and the one who's closest. I have a sister that's 11 years older than me, one that's 10 years older than me, my brother's 9 years older than me. My mom had 3 kids before she was 20. They're like boom, boom, boom. Then a little break to Gwen, who's about 5 years older than me, than me. So I was an accident maybe, and I think it was around the time that the birth control pill came out, because all of my siblings would refer to me as the pill. joking. We have some other names. They would call me the pill, like I was a huge accident. But they spoiled me more than my parents did. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
A little too loud.
Too loud with that thing, right? So I had everything I needed and a good bit of what I wanted. And, you know, I can remember just this uneasy feeling of nothing was enough. Nothing was ever enough. You know, like straight A's in elementary school, I need to do better. Sports, anything. It was just never enough. I had this severe uneasy anxiety at a young age. My oldest sister actually lost her first child to crib death when he was 9 weeks old, and I was like 8 or 9. And I was in 4th grade, whatever that was, and I could just remember like calling my parents every other day to come get me out of school. Like I was nervous stomach, I was throwing up. After the death, it just kind of turned my whole world around. But, you know, fast forward a couple years later, my brother's a senior in high school, parents out of town. I'm 10 years old, and he's having a party. And they used to have the small can beer, not the ponies, but the 8-ounce cans, right? And I'm just sipping on that. And I'm 10 years old. And looking back, I don't remember going to sleep that night at 10 years old. Unfortunately, I just lost my father. He passed away at the end of June. But when we all gathered around my mother and have been trying to stay as close to her as possible since, again, she's 83. She's been with my dad since she was 16. But we put all these boards together for the services, and I'm looking at the board, and they're like, oh yeah, this was Mom and Dad's 25th anniversary. I was like, I was shit-faced in that picture. I'm 13 years old. You know, something's wrong with that. But it wasn't a big deal, like at that age, 13, 14, to drink. I couldn't, you know, being at the Saints game, sipping my dad's dome foam, it was what it was. And I probably took it to the next level more than my closest friends. And then when I was 18, I just graduated from high school, graduated in honors, was going to LSU. I'm going to be pre-med. I'm going to be a doctor. And my parents split. And, you know, found out about it. What's said here stays here, like we say in the rooms of recovery. My father was having an affair at the time. And I kind of knew it before he told my mother. And I was the only one at the house, and my mother was a mess. I mean, I think she lost 50 pounds in like a week. And it devastated her, and it devastated me. And it was back when the food broker business was really big, and my dad was the vice president of his company, and like Gatorade and Kool-Aid was some of their big accounts. And I was working for him, just a summer job, and I quit working, and I just turned to alcohol. Alcohol did for me what anything else couldn't do. You know, it calmed the storm in my head. And that moment, which was like May 15th or so, I was going out every night, quit working. I had a good bit of money I had received from graduation from friends and family friends. And then started working back with one of my sisters at the YMCA as a summer counselor. Well, we all went out on Wednesday night, and I was driving and dropped somebody off, and I don't remember most of that day. That was July 28th, 1988. It was in uptown New Orleans. I live in Metairie, not far from Lafayette Park. And my parents' house at the time was just a little bit further than where I am. I don't remember much of that day, but I winded up getting in a really bad car accident. I was 5 blocks from my mom's house. I went through a telephone pole and into someone's house. So when the car hit the telephone pole, it went airborne for a minute, and like my left leg stayed in the car, but I didn't have a seatbelt on, but everything else came out. And it was a little car. It was pretty much brand new, like me and my mom. It was me and my mom's car, but it was like a Chevy Spectrum, which was like a smaller than a Toyota Corolla was. So I hit the pole, and my left leg came out of the car. I mean, stayed in. Everything else came out, and on its side, kind of went into this house and into someone's. It was like the dining room area. Yeah, crazy story is, you know, I don't remember any of that, and I didn't have vitals when the fire department finally found me. But my mother's best friend lived right across the street, and her two boys were living at home, Peter and Arnold, and they came out the house because they heard a boom, and the pole I hit was down, but the next pole had a transformer on it, and it fell like right behind my car. So they thought, the POs, the name of the people who lived across the street, they thought that house was on fire. So they were actually called 911 quicker than the people whose house I hit. And I'm like talking to my brother-in-law, who we all kind of lived in the neighborhood, and he was like, talks about the amount of police that were there and the amount of firemen that were there. It was probably like 2 in the morning on a Thursday morning, because we went out that Wednesday night, and just they didn't know what happened. Like, and then eventually my mom's best friend comes out the house, and they say, "Oh, that's a car," and my mom's like, "That looks like," I mean, Miss Jerry was like, "That looks like Kevin's car, and Mel's car," and they said, "We found somebody. Here's his license. He lives at 1521 Frankel Avenue." And Miss Jerry goes, "No, it's 1501 Frankel Avenue." And he looked, he goes, "You're right, it's 1501. And that's when she knew it was me. But many hours in emergency surgery. Friend Liz was here tonight, met my oldest sister last week, and told her the story of Lynn. She woke me up from that 12-hour surgery. I had no idea where I was, but it felt like it was like lifting 1,000 pounds just to open my eyelids. And you know, it was probably like 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and she came in yelling, and her I think my grandmother was with her, but I heard her voice, and then kind of woke up. I was in the hospital for 2 months. I lost my spleen, and then eventually my left kidney, and then eventually the clamp they put on when they take the kidney out dissolved too quickly. So I had 5 surgeries while I was there. The last was like a skin graft. So I lost my spleen, my left kidney, and I had a compound fracture of my femur right above the knee. And so like I wake up and I'm in traction. I still don't know what's going on. At first there was still a tube down my throat, and then they extubated me. And instead of that being an eye-opening experience, I had severe acid burn on, I think it was battery acid, on my good leg, the whole hamstring. Like I don't really have a hamstring any longer. It's just a lot of scar tissue. And so they had to change my dressings like every 6 hours, and my leg was just stuck in traction, even though it really wasn't holding it straight in line. It was just a bar going through the bottom of it. When looking back, when the compound fracture was at top, it's like my bone wasn't healed yet. Why didn't they put 2 pins in and kind of keep it stationary? I don't think they thought I was going to make it. And there were any time I started to get a little bit better, something else would happen, and I'd wake up in ICU again. And it was just like, I'm never going to get out of here. But instead of that being an eye-opening experience, I quickly got addicted to the pain meds. I was getting Demerol IV push, which is straight in your veins, every 3 hours. And I received that for like 6 weeks straight. And then when I was finally released to go home, I'm 6'1", 255 pounds. I couldn't eat for 6 weeks. I couldn't eat or drink anything for 6 weeks. I was 94 pounds, the same height I am now. When I got home, I made it to a whopping 101. And I was 100 pounds. I couldn't get myself out the toilet. I couldn't get myself in the tub. I needed help for everything. And but I was so excited to be home. Like, I had a couple of weeks of peace, or so I thought. And then I had to have another surgery on my leg, and they gave me another script for Percodan or whatever it was at the time. And I'm like, oh yeah. And from that moment on, I stayed addicted to the pain meds. Anything that said take as needed, I was taking it. And alcohol. And when I would stop with the pills, I would turn more to alcohol. But all the way up until 2001, it was bad. But at first, it wasn't that bad. And I was able to keep it together on the outside of functioning alcoholic addict. Met a beautiful woman. I was working for the recreation department as like summer assistant at Mike Miley Playground. She was the girls' summer assistant. I was like coaching the all-star teams, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And met Karen then, and we started dating, and she really did not have much of a clue about, and it wasn't every day then, but it was a lot. And the alcohol was always pretty bad, but I think our father was an alcoholic, so maybe she was used to it, I don't know. But anyway, I had a good life, but I always went back to the pills, and when the pills ran out, I always just got more alcohol. And, but between, I was like 90, I had numerous surgeries on my leg. I had this device put on it in '89 where they actually cut your outer bone in half. And you have this, it was called an Elizarov, and now it's like an external fixation device. So I had 5 rings on the outside of my leg with 14 pins going through and through my bone. And each day I would have to pull the rings apart, but they had rods going through the rings. And I would literally just turn one of the little nuts, one quick rotation on each of the 4 rods. So it was slowly like separating my leg, because my leg was 3.5 inches shorter than my right leg, and it was bowed in, where my normal angle was 7 degrees out, it was 15 degrees in. So it was that doctor that first, her name was Michelle Zimbo. She was young. I had to go to Children's Hospital because she was the only doctor in the state that knew how to do this procedure. And I'm like, let's go. And Deacon Louis was telling me about a person who lost his leg, but at first he lost a toe, and he eventually lost the other 4 toes. And he thought he was getting over on the doctors because he knew if he got toes amputated, he would get more pain meds. And the insanity is, like, I didn't care that this device was going to get put on me that's going to pull my leg, skin ripping after it's on for 3 months. Like, I'll be able to get pills whenever I want them. She knew I had an issue, so she gave me Tylenol 3 with codeine and like 3 refills. I'm like, that's what you give a newborn. I'm like, and you giving that to me? So the following year, I went up to LSU. All my friends had been there, for a year. I had to sit out the whole year because of the accident, all my problems. And even had that Elizarov on my first semester there. And it was a little bit before that where if I went into your house or if I was in your bathroom, I was digging through your medicine cabinet. And it got so bad, it got to be a point where when I entered your house, my main objective was to figure out where you put your medicine, A lot of people put it in the bathroom, some in the kitchen, and then some in that nightstand. But it was insane, but that's what I would do. I remember even like kids and families that I was really close to. I remember like one of the moms had a hysterectomy and literally taking the capsule apart, pulling out all the good stuff and putting BC powder back in the capsule.
Or coffee creamer.
Oh, coffee creamer. Yes. I didn't do that then. But yeah. But my life looked good on the outside, and eventually got married and in 1997, and it was probably around 95 where I wound up just getting a general studies degree, just so I had a degree to start teaching and coaching. I wanted to be a high school basketball coach, and it was probably around then. Now, between 90 and 95, I had a couple of overdoses. Fentanyl was not around then. And heroin, if you wanted heroin in like the mid 90s, it was probably like $80 and you had to go to the hood to get it. It's not anything like it is today. It's so much more accessible today, and it's so cheap. But I had a couple of overdoses, and I was just like, oh, it was because of school. I did something stupid. I always was able to weasel my way out of it. When I entered Bridge House, they showed us these denial patterns, and I'm like, holy smoke! Like minimizing, manipulation, comparison, avoidance, and I'm like, I was the king of those denial patterns. The manipulation with my parents, with my sisters, with my job, with my wife was insane. And it was probably in 95 where I never really drank much wine. I started drinking wine and I'm like, whoa, this kind of has the same effect as Perconin and Vicodin on me. So it was at that point where it went from, a 5-day weekend to a 7-day weekend, and it was drinking every day, a lot, every night. And then when I woke up in the morning, I would have to give myself some amphetamines to drain the alcohol, to be functional that day so I could get through whatever my job was at the time. And I was at Holy Cross for 1 year as assistant basketball coach and the head golf coach. And then I got offered the job at Crescent City Baptist, which is still around. It's Crescent City Christian now, a small school in Metairie. And I went there and became the head basketball coach and assistant AD, and then eventually became the AD. My daughter was born in 99, Grace, but I knew nothing about Bridge House or Grace House at the time. But when my wife was 8 months pregnant, she thought I had stopped drinking and using for over a month, and I really had never stopped. Like, I was able to put this amount of this into my system, this amount of that into my system to get me up, this amount of this in my system to bring me down, drink till you pass out, and then start the cycle all over again. And eventually, my formulas didn't work. They started turning on me. But my wife's 8 months pregnant with Grace. She wakes up, calls my sister, calls 911. I'm foaming at the mouth. And I had an alcohol-induced seizure. I was brought to East Jefferson. And I can remember her telling the doctor, no, he stopped drinking. And, over a month ago. And I really had never stopped. So it wasn't long after Grace was born that my wife was like, see ya. And so I at one point I was the youngest athletic director in the state. And when people started saying you might have a problem, I was like, not me. Look at my brother-in-law. He smokes weed every day of his life. This brother-in-law's died. He's doing this. Y'all are crazy. And my parents winded up getting back together not long after my accident. But my father's like, he just thought I needed anger management. And that would cure everything. But eventually lost my wife my home, had restricted visitation of Grace. I could only see her 8 hours a week, and other family members had to be present. No alcohol and or drugs on the scene. And then I eventually lost my job. And it was when I lost my job that things spiraled downhill, because I had a little bit of money and a whole lot of time and was isolating. And isolating for an alcoholic and addict is not wise. Whether you're still using, whether you've been sober for 20 days or you've been sober for 20 years. One of the sayings we used to always say in Bridge House was, if isolation were a good thing, it wouldn't be such a harsh punishment in prison. And how true that is. But that was, so we're at 1999. But growing up, one of my good friends, Kyle, his uncle was running Bridge House. And I knew we used to go there like day before Thanksgiving and feed the homeless, or the day before, or Christmas Day and feed the homeless. And that's all I knew about Bridge House, was that I thought they feed the homeless and I think they help them get a job. And that was it. Well, after my wife left, the family did a mini intervention, and they're like, you need to go talk to Buzzy. And Buzzy was the executive director at the time. He had been sober for about probably like 15 years at that time, maybe a little bit longer. And he told me some suggestions. He never pounded me. He was never confrontational. He just gave me some suggestions and shared a little bit about himself. And like I just saw in him, I knew he had something I wanted, and that he was at peace and with himself. But I wasn't ready yet. I wasn't ready to go to AA meetings. I'd go to AA meetings, but I'd be filled up with Vicodin or Xanax or whatever was in the cabinet at the time. So I had talked to him for about 2 years, and doing this, stopped drinking in public, started drinking O'Doul's, never drank in front of anybody anymore. And then eventually, like the pills ran out and my body started rejecting alcohol, or so it seemed. And I was 120 pounds, and I finally came clean with Buzzy. I mean, he'd opened his house, his home, his office. He even came to some of our basketball games when I was coaching. And he was just amazing. I mean, more than anything, he just listened. He just listened to me and never judged. Well, fast forward to March 30th. I could walk in any doctor's office and get a prescription. Thank God, OxyContin really wasn't out then. But I can remember one of my last stints at my original orthopedics office. I was in the office. This had to be like 99 or 2000. And I'm reading this article, and it's talking about OxyContin. And it's like, instead of having to take 10 Percodan a day, you take one of these. So, of course, I go in the office. I'm like, this is what I need. And he's like, yeah, I don't know if I know much about that. So we're going to continue with this. But thank God, like in today's world, I really believe I'd be dead just because of the strength and of the stuff they have on the street. And they're mixing it with everything. Fentanyl is usually the number one thing that is being put in cocaine, crystal meth, you name it. And one shot can kill you. But, my parents sent me to a psychiatrist. I was manipulating him, having the Klonopin, the long-acting Xanax, delivered here to this Rite Aid, and then another one in Patio Drugs. But it was, it was all the same prescription, where I just duplicated it or swindled and manipulated his secretary to get more. And then eventually it all just came to a head. And really those last 6 months I was existing, I wanted to go to sleep and not wake up. I didn't want to kill myself, but I did not want to be here anymore. And I knew if I were to die, You know, I was like, if you die by suicide, that's going to kill your folks. That's going to kill your siblings, your ex-wife, your daughter. But if I just die, you know, everybody will be better off. And looking back, they would have been if I would have continued on that path, if I would have continued in my active addiction. So fast forward to March 30th, 2001, I come clean with the last psychiatrist I was seeing, with my parents and with Buzzy. And my dad came home from work. I had moved back in with my parents the last couple of months because I really didn't have any money. And gave me the riot act. I can't believe you're doing this. I can't believe that. What did your mom and I do so bad to deserve you? The riot act from deep in Metairie, almost Kenner, to Bridge House, which is 1160 Camp Street, just in my ear. And we go into Buzzy's office, and Buzzy had never yelled at me. My dad goes to the bathroom. Buzzy's yelling at me now. He's like, if you'd have done what I told you to do, you know, like all this advice he had about 12-step meetings and you know, getting connected and reading the big book. He's like, if you'd have done that, Kevin, you wouldn't be in this boat today. And then he's like, but my breathing was probably 50 respirations a minute. He's like, you need to go to detox. I was 120 pounds, 6'1", and so I'm like, okay. And I made a commitment to him and to my dad that I would come back to Bridge House when I finished detox. So I sat in one of their little meeting rooms for about 3 hours, and it felt like 3 weeks. And I met one of the guys, black guy from Chicago, and he's making coffee. They're getting ready to start an AA meeting. I start talking to him, and he's in the house. I'm like, you're in Bridge House? He's like, yeah. And he was from Chicago. I'm like, you came down here to get sober? Like, what is wrong with you? Anyway, there was just a little bit of hope, I guess, right there. Well, then they finally get a detox bed, and it was Charity Hospital. So Charity had like 45 beds for men, just detox, like 30 for women. It was crazy. They had tons of detox beds. So the following day was March 31st, 2001. I was turning 31. It was my golden birthday. And I woke up and I'm in Charity's detox, you know. And I'm like, this is not where you want to be when you grow up. You know, to think of what my life had become. And was there for 5 days, went back. My dad, back up. Before those big double doors opened to the 4th floor detox unit, it was either 3rd or 4th floor, but they would always threaten the people that were acting up that they were going to send them to the other floor with the psych patients, or if you acted up in detox. Well, we're getting ready to walk in my door, and my dad grabs me, he goes, wait, you don't have to do this. And I'm like, Dad, I do. You know, I do. And thank God I walk in, and unfortunately, one of the kids I had coached, our best player at Holy Cross, died in a car accident from drinking and driving. And the tech, the nursing assistant, whatever he was Jamal's dad. And he saw me and he was like, Coach, like he had no clue. And I'm like, God, it's good seeing you. You know, somebody I know. And he put me in the bed. I needed 2 pints of blood. I was bleeding internally, was 120 pounds. Fast forward a week later, and I made a commitment that I was going to go to Bridge House. And like Deacon Louis said, and I said earlier, I was scared to death. I really had no clue what was going on there. I really just thought they would get me back on my feet, a few meals, start eating again, and like go work over here, and that'll be it. I had no idea like the full-fledged treatment facility that it was. And even like fast forward to today, like the program we have today is better than it's ever been. And it was great back then. With talking with a fellow alumni of Bridge House, Grace House. When I was in the house it was a year-long program. So that's a huge commitment. And it was easy to get into if we had a bed, but like I said, difficult to stay. And a lot has transitioned over those years. But first thing I saw was this black guy come up to me, hugs me, it's like, look, man, we love you. You don't have to live like that anymore. And I'm like, who the hell are you? You don't know me. You don't know anything about me. And I'm just looking at him. And then my other roommate, I was as soon as you walk through those double doors, the first bedroom to your left was room A. And they had 4 beds in there, and I was in one bed. So my feet were facing the guy's bed who was pointing toward me. And it was an older black man. He had been in Angola for 25 years. Like, you only get 25 years in Angola for like rape or murder. And I'm scared shitless. I'm like, he's gonna slit my throat in the middle of the night, you know? And then I got to know him, and we actually hired him. He was a Bridge House employee before me. But getting to know his story was that he killed his father, and his father was molesting stepbrother and stepsister, Warren was the oldest in the house. We had a blended family, the modern family, and he did it. And I was like, well, I could see myself doing that, especially if I'm loaded, you know? And it was just little bits and pieces where it just came to my mind. It was just like, I'm no different than anybody here. You know, whether you grew up in the Melpomene projects or Calliope, Uptown, Lakeview, Metairie, Kenner, it didn't matter. None of that mattered. At first, when I got in treatment, the 2 big things you asked were, are you court mandated? What's your drug of choice? It was about a month that I was in there when I'm like, none of that matters. All that matters is you're here and you have a chance. And it's still true to today. I mean, the people who are court mandated statistically will stay sober for 2 years just as long as the person that walks in voluntarily. And the numbers start getting a little different, but it doesn't. It doesn't matter why you're here, even if you're dogging it, just give it a chance. But the promises started coming true. There's I think they're called the 11-step promises, like you will know peace, you will comprehend the words, serenity, you will suddenly realize that God is doing for you what you couldn't do for yourself. And like those promises started coming to me real quick. Like, and then they assigned me a job. Like I was talking about Voc Rehab, it used to be 2 weeks in what we called pre-primary, and then the primary phase is when you were assigned a job. And they assigned me they assigned me like 4 places, none of them were working. I'm like, I'm gonna get kicked out because this isn't working. They assigned me to a dispatch office, and at the time we had like 6 trucks on the road picking up household denies. So I'm answering the phone, scheduling, and then they give me a list of people to call. And I start looking at this list, and I'm like, that guy lives on North Line in Old Metairie. You know, this is a millionaire. And they let me call him. I was like, did they know what I did? You know, and it just, to this day, we just had a meeting this morning, and the warehouse manager was there, and he's meeting with all the clinicians, the counselors, and he said, I just have to say something. And I was so glad he did, but he talked about what that vocational component meant to him and what it meant to me, because my self-esteem was done. You know, I was at the bottom of the bottom. You couldn't get any, or so I thought, any lower. And for them to believe in me, they let me do that. It was like I felt a part of the solution, and I hadn't been a part of the solution in a long time. And it was great, but I wasn't as sick as all those guys in the house. So when I got to the final phase of the program, it was like independent living. I started going, I don't have to go to all these 12-step meetings, because you had to go to 5 and get it signed, 5 a week. You still had to go to group. Still had your one-on-ones, but you could work outside, and then you actually getting paid then from an either outside company or if you were working for Bridge House Grace House. And eventually started sneaking it. It was just pills at first and then a little alcohol. And it all came to a head on October 28th of 2001. It was my mother's 60th? Yes. 60th surprise birthday party. And we had a little reception hall, the little reception room in Lafayette Park. And there was, my family drinks and still drinks and a good bit. And my brother used to abuse alcohol, it's a part of life. There was no alcohol there at this event because of me. And I show up shit-faced. And then got in a physical confrontation with my dad. And that was when I suddenly realized how dangerous this disease was, because I had been at rock bottom and started feeling the promises, and they started coming through, yet I still went back. And Buzzy and I used to talk about it all the time, like, was it needed? I don't know, maybe it was. Maybe the relapse wasn't needed. And a lot of people, have multiple relapses. So I'm very fortunate. What Bridge House did for me was, it gave me a structure. They had a lot of people there that had a little bit more time than me. They introduced me to the voc rehab component, and it was, very strict as far as our timeline goes for, your daily activities. It was not confrontational. It was not judgmental. Even for those who left and had to come back 2 weeks later, they were treated with the same amount of dignity, honor, and respect. And we were like a family, and we still are to this day. It's just an amazing place. And so I got sober then, finished that program on April 5th, started working in fundraising, and then just stayed on. And then when I graduated from the program, I told Buzzy, I had chances to get back into coaching, but I had started getting my daughter back half the time, and my home group met on a Friday nights, and basketball in high schools every Tuesday and Friday night, and I'm like, I don't know. I was like, I need to do what's safest for my recovery. So whatever I had to do to keep recovery first is what I was gonna do. And wound up staying. I remember begging Buzzy, I'm like, just keep me on another 6 months. I was making minimum wage or whatever. And then it wound up having a little bit of success and staying, and then, eventually became the director of development and then the CEO in 2023. Elsa was the CEO in between me and Buzzy, and she was my first counselor. She had also come through the program when Bridge House had a day program. She was amazing, and the growth we've had, from 2011 when Buzzy passed now, it's insane. Like we've been struggling financially the last couple of years, but when she left, she wanted to become one of the best places to work, and we've had that the last 3 years. As difficult it is for keeping our residents in the house and improving retention, it's the same for employees, especially the clinicians. It's a difficult job. You're gonna work where if 30% of your people succeed, you're doing fabulous. And right now, we're like at about 27% of those who are coming through our doors are completing our program, which is phenomenal. But you see deaths all the time. It's a tough business, I guess you would say. But it's an amazing place. It's an amazingly peaceful place. I re-met a girl I worked at the Y with in the rooms of AA. And she's beautiful, gorgeous. Wouldn't give me the time of day back in high school. But re-met her in an AA meeting. And she had to go because she got arrested for drunk in public or something. And then she started coming around more, and I'm like, finally I asked my sponsor, because they tell people, don't get into a new relationship until you had a year of sobriety. Well, it took me a minute to realize she wasn't an alcoholic, but I still couldn't do that, until finally I asked my sponsor, and my grand sponsor was like one of the most famous AAers in the greater New Orleans area, was Chicken Charlie. And when I asked my sponsor, Chicken Charlie was his sponsor. He turned to Mr. Charlie, he's like, Coach wants to start dating that girl over there. And he's like, what do you think? What do you think? She was probably like 6 or 7 months. He's like, I'm trying to figure out what took you so long, Mr. Charlie. And it was just we started seeing each other. We wound up getting married in 2006. Had a son not long after that in 2007. Me and my father mended all the fences. Grace is doing fabulous. She's in her 4th year of teaching, and just moved my son up to to LSU. So I'm an empty nester now, but I really believe I would not be alive if it were not for Bridge House. And one of the things Buzzy did yell again was, after that, I spilled a Coke on his wife. He wasn't at the party, but his wife was, at my mother's surprise party. And he came in and he's like, the one thing he did tell me, he's like, we can do a lot of good here, but Bridge House is not going to keep you sober. And he's like, so you got to get that through your head. You can't just graduate and it's over. He's like, but AA will, and the 12 steps will. And we still emphasize the 12 steps. We'll never get away from that as long as I'm around, and the people below me feel the same. We do offer other things, a modified therapeutic community, and the Voc rehab, and then kind of being gender sensitive and splitting the men and women. Seems like the best thing to do, because we did have some women at Bridge House. The last 2 women actually completed when I was in the house, but it was just insanity when, we had women sleeping upstairs and men downstairs. We say looking for love in all the wrong places, and it was creating more of a problem than helping it. But now we have 150 licensed beds. As Christina knows, we just started. The census has been really low at Grace House. We have 66 beds. So what we decided to do was, it's 5 buildings on 2 acres of land. Grace House, it's in Algiers. It's beautiful. It was built to be a Jesuit priest retirement home. And we purchased it in like 2019, 2018. And what we decided to do was, it's difficult for the men who complete our program, if they've burnt ties with all of their family and friends. A lot of them will move into an Oxford house, which is a place you live in, and there's usually 3 other men with you that are in recovery, kind of police themselves, and it works. They run very successful. There's not as many for women, and then also Grace House being kind of like in deep Algiers, it's almost the English turn. It's difficult sometimes for like people to come sponsor just to get from back and forth. So we use one of those houses now and opened our own little sober living. So we can have 10 beds for sober living and 52 for our residential program. And actually we moved some offices around. We're going to be able to expand our capacity at Bridge House by 4 beds. We moved one of the offices across the street and turned her office and group room into a bedroom that'll have 4 more beds. The demand for our services for men is overwhelming. Our wait list is 20 to 30. I mean, occasionally it'll get below 20, but not often. We are the only really free long-term facility in the area. There are a lot of places that'll detox you. There are a lot of places. If you just have Medicaid or uninsured, there's quite a few places now that offer detox, medical detox, and you need that for opiates and alcohol. And then there's a good bit of places that will keep you for another 35 days, maybe up to 45 days. So after that, it's hard to make money with your Medicaid reimbursement after that 45 days. So we get referrals from all of the local treatment facilities. If they don't have a sober living program, that they'll send them to us. And that's the person realizing, I have 30, 45 days clean, but I know I need more. And so we get referrals from all over the state for men. For women, we have open beds and we can get you in really quick. But for men, it's almost like sometimes I believe we could be twice as large and still have a wait list. But it's an amazing place. I mentioned a little bit about the funding. We basically have 4 funding streams. Thrift stores, which is 95% of thrift store sales are donations. We buy, refurbish box springs and mattresses, but everything else is donated. Our used car lot, it's donated vehicles. We have people that are assigned residents when they're in their primary phase or phase 2 of the program, which is usually after 30 days. They're assigned a job within our organization. So it could be the kitchen, it could be the warehouse, it could be a thrift store, maintenance, intake, you name it. And during that phase, I say it's the meat and potatoes of our program, because you have a substance abuse counselor. At Bridge House, you also have a vocational rehabilitation counselor, and then you have a worksite supervisor. So you have 3 people that are really trying to look out for your best interest. And they also have eyes on you, so some people may do great at the job site, but are terrible, in group, or vice versa. I say it's difficult to bullshit a bullshitter, but at Bridge House, so we know that, right? But at Bridge House, it's very difficult to go unseen, because most of the people that walk through our doors have been through 3 other treatment episodes, so they know what to do. The majority of people that come through know what to do, but they just haven't done it. And we judge people on their actions. It's easy to be Catholic in this building and the building right next to it, but what do I look like, when I pull out on the highway? It's easy to be in recovery when you're in a 12-step meeting. It's easier to be in recovery when you're in a group meeting. But what is that person like when they're at a job site where it might be 90 degrees and Joey's not doing what he's supposed to, and your boss is how do you handle the daily stresses of the work environment, but still being in a place that's safe, and we're asking you to practice the spiritual principles of recovery? That's reality, And Buzzy Bridge House was started in '57, but when he came in '84, he realized that the guys, when they went back to reality, were quickly relapsing. So he extended the length of stay, and in 1984, you could not get any government money for alcoholic men. It was just forget about it. So he asked his friends and peers for money, and had a couple of fundraising events. So he received tons. He received a good bit of money from what he said, but he received an overwhelming amount of in-kind items like clothing, chairs, tables, appliances. So that's when he started a thrift store. Not only was it a place to bring in money, but really more importantly, it's a place for the individuals who are with us to go through the voc portion of our program. And they wake up every day and they have a morning meditation, they eat breakfast. They might have a therapeutic duty. If you've been with us for over a week, a month, and you're in a phase 2, you report to job site, just like you and me do. And then you go back, when you get off work, you go eat dinner, you have a group meeting, and then you go to usually a 12-step meeting. So it's very structured. And the jobs, not only does it help build your self-esteem and feel like you're part of the solution, it also keeps you out of your head. A lot of people in recovery will say we have this thing in us called the itty bitty committee and stinking thinking, and but most people have a lot going on mentally that are in the rooms. But yeah, Bridge House and Grace House is an amazing place. We were on Camp Street for years, and then we built a new facility on Earhart. It was kind of Buzzy's dream to have our own facility, because on Camp Street we were just renting that, and we rented it from '62 to 2019, and we built the new facility on Earhart. We moved all the men in 2010, which was 84 men. Bridge House and Grace House were separate organizations, and after Katrina, Grace House was struggling to reopen, so they didn't have really a nest egg, and we had a couple $1 million to start building this new facility. We had already bought the land, so we funded Grace House so they could open up in March of '06, and then we officially merged with them in October of '06. But the demand for women's beds was really high because our capacity at the time was only 25 beds. So women would have to wait a month, 2, maybe even 3 months to get in. So when we moved all the men in on a leap of faith and thinking we could raise money, and we did, we expanded Grace House from the 25 beds that were on Delachey Street, added 45 on Camp Street, so we had 70 beds. We're fully licensed. There's a bunch of ways you can help us, whether it's cash, clothes, or car. There's no vehicle that we will not pick up. Now, the thrift store can be a little picky with their furniture sometimes, but they know what they can sell, and they do an amazing job. It's if you ever want to take a tour and see it, it's pretty amazing. We own all of our property now. We own Bridge House, we own Grace House, we own where the New Orleans thrift store is, our warehouse, and our car lot. And the only thing we do not own is the thrift store that's in Jefferson Parish on Airline Drive. So life is pretty good today, even as stressful as it is to be in charge. It was a lot easier when Elsa was in charge and I was the assistant guy. I would tell my friends that all the time. I would tell Elsa, I'm like, it was so much easier being an assistant coach than being the head coach. I was like, I was a really good assistant coach. But yeah, it's filled with stress. I mean, we have so many facilities. With the Medicaid expansion that came to the state of Louisiana in 2016, a lot of guidelines were put in place, like in order to get a nickel from the state, you have to have X, Y, and Z. And that cost a lot more money. Even though we were receiving more money from Medicaid, we had to hire more people in order to check all the boxes. And it's a special place. But with that, with 150 beds, we have 90 full-time employees, and most of those are involved around our clinical team. The thrift store operation only has 17, and the car lot's like 5. And then we have, a CFO and a couple of fundraisers, and the rest is our clinical team, which includes all of our counselors at both locations, a voc rehab counselor, intake counselors, and then which they call techs or resident advisors. So that's my story. I went from my story to Bridge House, Grace House. Deacon Louis said you had to 9 o'clock, but that I can't talk anymore.
Does anybody have any questions?
No, I don't have a question, but I don't know if anybody's ever been to Bridge House down on Earhart. It is amazing. it is just amazing. The
take
stuff
it-
that goes on back there, people, what they're doing is to me, I met Kevin maybe what, 2 or 3 years ago?
About,
You
yeah.
know, my wife belongs to a Rotary club here in Slidell, and so they were collecting stuff for the thrift store, so we went down there to make a delivery, and he took us through the warehouse and showed us
Yeah.
what was going on, and it's just amazing. We spoke to a couple of the residents,
Yeah.
you know, and it's been great. I've been in recovery now for almost 22 years, and my AA group has been donating to Rich House now for probably the 2 or 3 years that we.
Yeah. Every time I come to Slidell, I'll look for you.
Yeah, he looks for money every time.
Do you take, like, court people at,
Yes. So we, at any given time, probably 25% of our population is involved in the criminal justice system.
Okay.
So we have people that can be mandated. We used to have serious problems with like judges. They like, we don't get any more money. We might not get any money, but they want you to take this person in. I'm like, that day, I'm like, wait, he's in jail.
Any money?
No, we do, most of the people that are mandated, most of those people do wind up qualifying for Medicaid, and if they don't have it, we'll help them apply for it. But yeah, we get people that are mandated. We get people that are still in drug court, and when they finish with us, they have to stay in drug court for another year. But like I said early on, you know, their success is just as good as the person that's walking in.
And it's kind of a personal question, but when you got in that automobile accident, what did police say about that?
So I don't think back in the 89s and 90s, it's a crazy stat. So I don't think they thought I would make it, first of all. So they're on the scene and they're trying to save my life. But in like in the 80s and 90s, like if you were severely hurt, they never gave you, it seemed like a DWI. I remember asking one of my cop friends, I was like, no. And then with the homeowners wound up like suing us, and they got a few bills from us, our insurance company, but no, nothing.
That was lucky.
It's lucky and maybe not, you know? There was so many times, especially being over here, that like between 97 and 2001, I probably totaled 4 cars. Never arrested. Never.
Knock on wood.
Yeah. But sometimes I think I wish I would have been. Because, you know,
It might have changed your life.
right. Like I tell judges that are trying to get the guy in so quick, I'm like, he's in prison. That's safer than being on the streets and shooting fentanyl, you know?
And luckily, you didn't hit anybody in the house.
Exactly.
When you was in the house.
I thank
That's what I was
God.
thinking I would be telling
I thank God every day. They got Jerry, who's a little bit older than me. Like I'm friends with his sister now. I think his parents have since passed. But he popped out of bed, and you know, like I said, he had a back injury. But thank God nobody was in the car. And
Nobody was in the house.
right, they were in the house. I just didn't hit.
But sitting around
Right.
at a table
Exactly.
or something, you know.
No, I think
2 in the morning, though, they're probably in bed.
I thank God every day that no one was injured, because I don't know if I could have lived with myself at the time. She's got one, and then you.
Okay, my question is Medicaid. When Trump started slashing, or Elon, whatever, started slashing stuff like that to Medicaid, did stuff like that you're talking about get slashed as well?
So there's a couple of different types of federal funding. So the Medicaid reimbursement, which had not been increased since like 2012, got increased like 6 months ago, and the state was like, we're only going to be able to increase it for 9 months, and then we thought we were going to have to go back to our old rates. Most of the people we're treating will qualify for Medicaid treatment for like 90 days. and the Medicaid for that level pays like $102 a day. It costs us about $115 a day. And then after that, we're still, this patient is still with us. It's not like we kick him to the curb when Medicaid runs out. So Medicaid has not decreased, but it may, we may see the effects of that in early 27. But the other state-run agencies, a couple of our contracts. So besides the Medicaid reimbursement, that depends on the individual having Medicaid and us getting reimbursed for doing what we're doing. There's also the Jefferson Parish Human Service District. I'm sure there's one in St. Tammany. Yeah. And then there's the Metropolitan Human Service District. Well, Metropolitan, for some reason, they have New Orleans Parish, but they also have St. Bernard and they also have Plaquemine. So we used to get, having 90 employees, our budget's huge now, but we used to get close to 300,000 from MHSD, and it got cut. It's going to be like 120. But we've seen a decrease in our car donations. Pre-COVID, we used to get 95 cars a month. And thank y'all. And now we get about 65. But we are getting a little bit more per car than we were before. So. But the last 3 years when insurance prices skyrocket for property insurance, revenues have been down a little and expenses have been up. I say when Elsa left, she wanted to become one of the best places to work. And we've done that, but that costs money too. That meant, we had to give people benefits. And prior to 2020, you got a little bit of your medical covered, and that was it. But now we have decent benefits for a charity. I had to cut some of that back, and when people left, we asked them to leave. We just evaluated their role and see if we couldn't spread it across. Because at one point we were at 104 full-time employees.
What do you do with the cars that you take? Can you sell it for scrap metal or something?
That's a great question. I was just telling my brother-in-law when we went to dinner. So we take anything if you got a title, we'll come get it. So worst case scenario is, even over here, we bring it back to us. It's not going to run, even if we put $2,000 in it. We send it to scrap. So about 40 to 50% of the cars we get are sent to the scrap yard. But we still get $470 per car. And then there's another percentage, you got to meet the guy who runs our car lot too. He's a character. He's a graduate. He used to be a thoroughbred jockey. Yes, Dennis. He's awesome, and his story is phenomenal. He literally lived on the streets. But what he'll do is there'll be a certain percentage of cars where we might spend a nickel because we think we can make money off of it, and we sell those at what we call retail. So those are on our car lot that anybody could buy. And then you have the scrap, and then there was another 25% or so of vehicles that he would sell for parts, like the people who own, a used car lot or a scrap yard or something. He doesn't feel comfortable selling it to just anyone, but people like that will. So.
And lastly, you donate, I donate stuff to Goodwill. I wouldn't mind donating it to Bridge House if I can just drive it around and donate stuff. What's the rule on that?
You come on the North Shore.
We don't do pickups on the North Shore, but you can bring it.
I can bring it, but do you take clothing and shoes?
So that's another great question. So clothing, anything you can bag a box, we're going to take. And as you saw, there's no clothing that we will not take. So what we feel like we don't feel comfortable in giving to our residents, because some people come in with nothing and you have to clothe them and everything. But most of the people come in with something. So if we don't feel comfortable giving it to our residents or selling it in a thrift store, we have a bail machine literally, you take the clothing and throw it in a machine like a dumpster, like the trash compactors. Well, it compresses the rags, and we take that and we bale it, and we sell it. We get like $8,000. I mean, we wait till we have enough to fill up an 18-wheeler, but we usually once a month. These companies, some of them use the rags, and some of it is distributed to third world countries. Some of it is even sold to third world countries.
You guys come pick up clothes?
We do, but we don't come to the North Shore.
That baling machine is unbelievable.
It's crazy. So we bale it, nothing goes to waste. Even like shoes, belts, purses, we'll sell that in bulk. Stuff we think we can't sell in the thrift store. Stuffed animals. It's amazing what some of these people will buy.
But you don't take books, right?
So we didn't. We do, like sometimes we will, sometimes we get a little overwhelmed. But Mike and Scott, it's funny you asked that, because we just reached out to a company that is considering buying books from us in bulk. So if we do that, but any spiritual books, yeah, or recovery books we put it in our libraries at one of the 2 facilities.
I want to promote Al-Anon
Yes,
for families and friends of alcoholics.
yes,
Substance use disorder.
yeah.
I just picked up my 16-year check.
Awesome. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I think, and Al-Anon has a website, like AA does. I think it's called Central Office, and it'll show you where meetings are. I mean, 12-step meetings are all over the place, and Al-Anon has grown tremendously too. If you can't find a meeting, you're not looking hard enough.
Where does the Al-Anon group?
There's 3.
Okay.
I got one on Conifer next to the
Yeah, Alana Club, yeah.
It's at 4:30 on Monday, and then we have, 6 o'clock on Wednesday night, out on Mission Drive, off of Airport Road, and one on, Friday mornings at 10.
I got some, little
You got
birds.
flyers back? Okay. 'Cause
Lots of them in Manville and Covington.
I think I brought 1 or 2 from the Alano Club, might be in my car. But they meet there, we meet there like 7 days a week, several different times.
Yeah.
The Early Birds, which is the group, which is my home group, meets Monday through Saturday at 7:30 in the morning. And then there's Old Farts and there's
Right.
a bunch of different names of groups that meet there.
That's an AA meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
AA.
Right.
We don't have NA in that building, but there is an NA meeting, I believe. at one
Oh,
of the
no,
churches
yeah.
in Old Town.
We got an NA meeting here on Tuesday nights.
Yeah. So,
And I know there's one at Our Lady of Lourdes too, I believe.
They got a Catholic in recovery over
Yeah,
there.
yeah, okay.
Christina? Oh, yeah.
I wanted to say thank you because I learned this while being at Grace House, Do the stupid stuff, right?
Right.
Wake up at 6, mop the floor, whatever it is with the whole scheduling all together at the end of the day. Oh, it works. It definitely works. So for me, without Grace House and God together,
Yep.
and this man right here that tried for years to talk to me into long-term dealing with me, but I was like, no. And then finally,
Yeah.
surrendered,
She lives by that schedule now.
Yep.
Everything
I'm
we
still
do,
on Grace House
it has to
schedule.
be like
3.5
Yep.
years later,
to
like,
the time.
I'm too
everything.
afraid to just go back to the old way, so I stick to that. So I want to thank you for
Yeah.
coming, because without you coming and without you doing what y'all do and, all that, then I wouldn't be staying here clean, helping other addicts,
Yeah.
breaking generational curses. And this is my hometown,
Yeah.
So it's like,
That's awesome,
It's
Christina.
on fire with
Yeah,
God
you've
and
de-
Grace House and-
3.5 years too.
Developing healthy habits.
Yeah.
November 11th will be.
They say you gotta be made out of steel to graduate that program, but steel don't break. You
Right.
graduate, you on a roll with it. And that's just,
Right.
I wanna thank you for doing
Oh, dude.
all the hard, behind the scenes stuff and all the.
It takes a village. Our board's very active, and there's a lot of people in the community that just, step up and support us. A lot of that stems from Buzzy. He had built such a great reputation.
I met his wife once.
Barbara.
An angel.
She is. She's the Energizer Bunny. She's like 87 and still goes and tailgates at every LSU game. She is nonstop. If it wouldn't be for her, I wouldn't be alive because I grew up with her nephew.
Oh, okay.
That's what I jokingly. Kyle calls my aunts and uncles Ann, and I call her Aunt Barbara. Yeah, good stuff.